All right, we're continuing on with our lessons about South Africa apartheid. We're going to kind of wrap up some of the information you learned in your book. And again, we're looking at how the government's policies influenced what was going on in South Africa and the people's lives, and along with how individuals influenced their community, particularly Nelson Mandela. And so when we start this lesson today, I want you to think, how does this cartoon represent what's going on in Africa during apartheid? What laws would you write on the blinds as he pulls them down over human rights? And what would you write on the ray of sunshine for human rights? What rights should every single person have regardless of where they're at in the world? But certain laws in South Africa are not allowing it. They're closing out the light. They're making sure people don't have those human rights. And so, again, think about the passbook law that you had to sign out wherever you went. Doesn't seem like much human rights. Being forced to take or learn a class in a language that you're not familiar with. Having to be living in a designated black area, your homelands. Quality of life is much lower. We've looked at this chart. You can see that. And you have no right to vote. So you're lacking a lot of human rights, and this is because of all these laws. Now, the passbook law, the Bantu Education Act, all led to people basically protesting and wanting change. And you're going to see after the Pass Law Act, protests, people start saying we are done protesting peacefully. And so you're going to see maybe more militant protests. In the U.S., we were seeing some of the same things. So I'm going to fly through some of these influential Americans very quickly. But just so you know, as South Africa is fighting for rights, we are having our own civil rights struggle in the United States. You had Martin Luther King Jr., believed in peaceful protests. He was a Baptist minister. Some of the big things he did was peaceful luncheons, black and white sitting at countertops, maybe where blacks were not supposed to be, according to law. You had the freedom rides where blacks and whites were intermingled on buses and trying to challenge the quo of blacks had to be segregated. And you have different peaceful protests where police attacked different African Americans. All of these were led to be very peaceful, to bring light to how they are being treated. You have a different movement in the United States at this time, Malcolm X, and he is going to be a human rights activist. He just believes in a different route to get to maybe better equality. He was a minister in the beliefs of the Nation of Islam. He believed in black empowerment, black supremacy, and the separation of black and white Americans. He publicly criticized mainstream civil rights because of the nonviolence and racial integration. It didn't seem to be working, and why should they just sit back and take it? So those are the two, I will say, two big movements going in the United States. So if you were in South Africa and everything was seeming like you had no say and you're seeing police turn violent to you, what would you do? Would you stay peaceful or would you fight? What is your choice? What would you do? I know it'd be very hard for me to turn the other cheek. And so you're going to see that many people break from that peaceful protests, especially after the Sharpeville massacre in 1961. And some leaders that broke from the peaceful movement of the students, one was Nelson Mandela. And you're going to see that they will start a sabotage campaign against government institutions or installations to try to bring apartheid to an end by bringing the government to their knees. And Nelson Mandela said, if the government's reactions to crush by naked force are nonviolent struggle, we have to reconsider our tactics. In my mind, we are closing a chapter on this question of nonviolent policy. And so you do see the people try to rise up. And you see a more militant movement, bombings, and targeting different government places in hopes that, hey, we can be free as well. Nelson Mandela To make a long story short, which you watch the video that discussed it, he will be put on trial for his involvement and he will be found guilty. And he does say, I have dedicated my life to the struggle of the African people. I have fought against white domination and I have fought against black domination. I've cherished the idea of a democratic and free society in which all persons will live in harmony and with an equal opportunity. It is an ideal for which I hope to live for and to see realized. But my Lord, if it needs to be, it is an ideal which I'm prepared to die. And so those were his opening statements. He will be found guilty, as you learned, and he will be put in prison for the rest of his life. International pressure will come. People are not happy around the world. Commonwealths, that's all these blue countries of England, will say, we are not doing business with you anymore. They'll ban air travel, ban ag imports, bank loans, not offer those. And you're going to see the U.S. will even put pressure on as well. But this is the attitude you're going to listen to a little bit. This is the attitude of many white South Africans, the Afrikaner population. And this is what they're going up against. And then be thinking there's a South African man who speaks. Can you have can you have peace with injustice?
Right. And so do I feel as a white person. We have survived as pure whites for many years, and I think that we also have the right to keep on surviving as whites for the next 200, 300, 400 years. So I don't see why we should be we should disappear, because that's what's going to happen. The white population in South Africa will totally disappear if this new compensation of period water comes through. You know, we will just disappear. We will all become chocolate color.
Now in South Africa, we're not fighting the whites. We're fighting the evil system. We're fighting injustice. Now remove injustice, then we'll have peace. You cannot have it otherwise. With injustice, you have no peace. It is impossible. Anyone who wants peace must fight for justice. Now, we are fighting for justice. Now, the nationalists think they can have peace and quiet with injustice. It's impossible. You can't have it.
You know, I think they are so confused by communist inspiring that they think we are doing them out on something. You know, we're doing them in, if that's the way I have to put it. They're losing out on something.
They always see a spectre behind every protest. And I just wonder whether one needs an agitator to feel hungry. I do not imagine that I need an agitator to protest against low wages. We do not have to tell children to throw stones. The children's reaction is an attitude, it's a response to injustice. Injustice in the classroom, injustice in the educational system, injustice in society. They live in slums, they have nothing to eat, their parents have no money, some have no houses.
But I can just see that if they carry on like that and, you know, it getting out of hand, that the army will just be called in and there'll be one big wipeout. And I myself feel the only way to stop this is to have one big wipeout like we had in Sharpeville. I think if the state president is put into a checkmate position where he really has to do something when it gets totally out of hand, I have no doubts about it. Then you'll call the army in and there'll be a wipeout as far as I...
All right, so you can see very different attitudes. You're going to see Nelson Mandela after he's released from prison, which you watched in the video. He was jailed for 27 years. He will be elected president, and he also becomes a Nobel Peace Prize winner. As you read in your textbook, you had large voter turnout, As you look at this, I want you to look, what is the difference in 1989 versus the 1999 election? A lot more people voting. That's right. 12.2 million more people voting. And people waited in long lines, as you can see by this picture. Huge lines. But maybe they waited hours. That really wasn't that much when you've been waiting a lifetime to have a say in government. And so Nelson Mandela will become president, and he teaches about reconciliation instead of retaliation, forgiveness versus revenge. And I love this quote for him, and if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. And so that is how he will govern as president and try to bring the country back together. However, you're going to see that there are still going to be issues with bringing them back together. You looked at unemployment rates in your textbook, and you can see there is still great unemployment differences between black and white. There are lots of other examples that you read in your book of inequality hasn't quite been achieved. You can see area that was once a homestead or a homeland that was only black areas. You can see what the quality of life looks like. Lots of porta potties. Doesn't look like electricity. Now think about these living conditions during COVID and why COVID could spread quite quickly through these living conditions when you can't practice some of those good hygiene skills like washing your hands frequently and things like that. It might not be a surprise that Omicron spread, that variant of COVID spread out of South Africa. Education still has some issues as well. And so you're going to watch a video about South Africa education. It has gotten vastly better, but there is still some issues and discrepancies between black and white education. So that is what you'll watch next.